Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to FitPet Boston Talks. This podcast features Boston, Massachusetts area dog professionals, and we sit down and chat about our lives, our dogs, and our careers. Today's episode features Meghan Grabau, owner of Beantown Hounds. Meghan specializes in off-leash pack hikes with groups of dogs and has been operating successfully for 12 years. Meghan has been very gracious to me over the past few years, offering advice and encouragement. I have a ton of respect for her, and I'm so thankful that she was willing to take the time to talk to me. We chatted about how she got started hiking dogs and how her own dogs influenced her journey. We specifically spent time talking about off-leash etiquette, and let's face it, we could all use some reminders on that topic. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Okay, we're rolling. I'm here with Meghan Grabau of Beantown Hounds. I'm going to do an introduction earlier in the show, so you don't have to say anything about yourself and how wonderful you are. But I wanted to kind of start by shaking the cobwebs off and talking about the Honda Element, which, if you don't know what it is, it looks like a toaster. When it first came out, everybody was like, that car looks like a toaster. But it quickly became a favorite among dog people. And I'd love for you to talk about it because you have a bunch of them and you probably know the car better than anybody else that I know. So please tell us about it and what is so great about it.
I mean, it's perfect for this business. I see florists use it too. And whenever I see someone driving who it's clearly just like their personal car, I like literally want to pull them over and ask what they love about it. Because if you're not a huge dog person, like it's a weird car. It looks like a toaster, but it's so great. We got our first one when they were still making them in 2007. And I drove like that, and I drove the like RAV4, like basically every brand's like mid-size SUV. And it's just perfect because like we just pop the rear seats out and it's just all rubber in the back, which is just amazing because like the dogs are constantly, well, I mean, there's wet and muddy is like the day-to-day, but then there's, you know, the peeing, the diarrhea, the vomit. Just cleans right off. So yeah, and I mean, they're also just, ours are all 4-wheel drive and they are beasts. I mean, we used to live in Waltham and they wouldn't plow our parking lot for our building. And I would go and like drive my Honda Element around to like clear paths for everyone else to like pull out of their spots. So, I mean, they just like, it's so great. And, yeah, I mean, they're so perfect for the dogs. Like they can beat them up, and they're also like lower than your standard SUV. So I feel like the dogs have a much easier time jumping in than, I know one dog walker, she has like a Ford Expedition, and I'm like, I'd have to lift half of my dogs into that thing, you know? So they can jump in and out. I love the like suicide doors allow you to like really control. That's like on the side where the rear passenger door is like opens from the front.
Yeah, it's the only design I've ever seen like that where you have to open up the front door to get the rear door, passenger door to open. And you're right, it does keep, you know, kind of, you have that control so that the dogs don't just barge out. Because once you train them not to barge out of the door, it's fine. But until you get to that point, it's a little slightly scary.
Like the rear hatch is different too in that it's a two.
Divided.
Yeah. And so, like, I can open the top of the back and, like, leash them all up. And, like, they have that bottom barrier still that is, like, an additional security of, like, no, you're not going anywhere yet. Like, we're not ready.
Right.
You know? And then, like, it's really easy. Then you just, like, drop the lower part and are like, okay. And then they, you know. So it does make it... it has a lot of like I've seen compared to like a lot of dog walkers use like Dodge Caravan or the Transits. I think, or do you have a Transit?
I have a Transit.
Yeah, that's like my next, like probably, I don't know, unless something else miraculous comes on the market.
I know it's brutal.
Yeah, because
there's just nothing there.
So they stopped making the Element in 2011, and we've been the last one we bought, we had shipped from Arizona because it was like rust free. Because now you're looking at, they've got almost 10 years on them. They're Hondas, so the mileage isn't a huge deal. Like that, you can still get the engines. Helps to be married to a
I was
car guy.
Say, you have an in-house mechanic at your disposal. So
yes, so that makes a huge difference. Big shout out to Alex on that one. He does all the maintenance and has probably saved me a lot of money over the years, and even just oil changes. But they're just getting harder and harder to find, and especially when you want like all-wheel drive and automatic, because the amount of driving we do. Like the very first one I had was a standard transmission, and just going up and down Route 9, like shifting all day.
Yep.
I had like calves of steel from pushing the clutch in and out. But so they're just awesome. And I don't know. I think you posted there, maybe someone, there's always whispers they're coming back. There's always.
So I saw some rogue, I don't know, it wasn't from Honda. It was a website that was insinuating that there would be a release in 2020. But it wasn't actual news from Honda. So, but it's really, really hard. So Laurie has one, and it's in the shop right now because we had gone out to dinner on Friday, and I was just sitting in the driver's seat. It was idling. I was waiting for her to come out, and it just stalled. And I was like, oh man. And we're lucky because we live a mile away from Honda. So she brought it in. It needs about $1,000 worth of work. It's a 2007. And she's like, okay, put the work in. Like, no, we were looking at other things, and she was just like, I just don't know what I want. So I feel like it's worth it not to spend the money. It's worth it to spend the money, have the peace of mind that I can wait a little bit longer until something comes out that I actually want. So it's a struggle because even in my car, I took all the seats out. I built a little platform, but dog peed in there last week. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take everything out and clean underneath the weather guard because I have one of those mats. So I pulled it out, and there's carpet underneath, obviously. So stupid. But we've removed all the carpet out of our homes, but for some reason we still have it in our cars. And it was like, there was so much fur underneath it. Yeah. And I was like, how did it even get here? It's like, I've never moved this weather guard, and it's like covered in fur. So there's really nothing comparable.
Yeah.
Because the other thing about the Element is you can take the seats out and it's flat in the back.
Right.
Which is, I've never seen another car like that.
Yeah, it's great. One interesting thing about the Honda, though, is the spare tire is in the back. So if you get a flat with like 5 dogs in the back, you're like
challenging.
Trying to but all the dirt and hair and everything collects in that spare tire wheel well too. And it's just, I feel like that's the thing that's great about the Element is it is all like rubber. So when they were at one point we're saying you could just like hose it out. We haven't really given like the full hose a try, but we definitely take like buckets and sopping wet rags and
mop it
out. And there's just nothing else like that.
Nope. A van. But then what I've found is with the van, you don't have the climate control. And when you have live animals, it's like a huge issue. That's why I got the passenger van, because it has air conditioning. Yeah. And it gets hot in there if I don't have the air on in the back. If I just have it on the front, like I get hot sitting in the front. So I can imagine that they're hot in the back. So it's a struggle, I think. I wish that like Honda would read all of these Facebook pages where everybody is lamenting left and right and just decide to come out with another one.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I did hear that they have it available again in Japan. So maybe it's just a matter of like...
Maybe it's a matter of time.
A couple more years.
Yeah, and real determination from the dog people.
I know. And next they just need to make it a hybrid. Yes. That's the only Honda, if you're listening, please with sugar on top. You could make it a hybrid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for entertaining
Sure.
me with that, because I really appreciate somebody who appreciates the value of a utility vehicle that's for a specific purpose, which is for exactly what we do. And we are not alone. I know that for a fact. But I wanted to talk now, kind of shift gears a little and talk about your business. And I have tons of respect for you, and pretty much
Thank
have
you.
since the giddy up for me. And, you know, you really do what I thought I was going to be doing when I started dog walking. But because I work more towards the city, it's just, I haven't had the calling card hasn't been there for the really, like, you do exclusively off-leash stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's incredible. And I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you got started. And you just celebrated, what, like 12 or 13 years?
12
years. Yeah, that's amazing. So if you could just kind of just chit chat about about what you do.
Yeah. The start was sort of, I mean, I didn't know like what I was really going to do. I used to be a teacher, and that wasn't, it turned out what I wanted to do. And
What did you teach?
high school math.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
Like pre-calc and algebra 2 and oh, wow.
I love math. Don't get to use it much the way that I did, but and I just didn't really know like what else. I knew I wasn't an office person, and I didn't really know what else I wanted to do. And then I was hiking with Lola, our OG dog, and like one August when I was on vacation, and I saw a woman with like 7 or 8 dogs, and I was like, wait a minute, this is a job? And it turned out at the time, Alex had a customer at his business that was a trainer. And so I sort of connected up with him and his wife, and they were awesome and totally like gave me kind of the lay of the land. And they had been doing the off-leash hikes too, because it was like, oh, I could be a dog walker. And then I thought about like, oh, okay, well, I could do Boston and go to like a building and pick up 6 dogs and walk them around like Back Bay or whatever. And then I saw the off-leash thing, and I was like, oh no, this is like what I'm interested in. And so they were doing it, and they sort of showed me around. She showed me Callahan. I'd never been there. We were living in Newton at the time. And so I just took kind of like a huge leap of faith and was like, I'm going to start a dog walking business. And it was kind of crazy to go from like the steady, like sort of even keeled world. I mean, teaching has its own ups and downs and everything, but it's a steady job, paycheck, whatever.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about like the business end of it.
Right.
You can just focus on the teaching part of it.
And I had no business experience. You know, I took like Econ 101 or something, and that's not even business. That's just supply and demand. So I just was like, I'm going to do this. And I put ads on Craigslist because it was 2007, and that was like what you did. And slowly people started finding me, and my parents were totally freaked out.
Yep.
And they're 100% on board now. Yeah. Mom and Dad, I know. But yeah, I mean, like in 2007, it was like
it wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing.
Yeah. Now I feel like because one of your recent social media posts was incredible, and you were remembering a dog that was part of your pack, and you had made the comment that she had joined before you even had, a phone to take a picture to upload to Instagram. And that's a huge part of my business model, is like people being able to see what I'm doing on social media. And you started in, Facebook was 2004. So
Right.
business on Facebook wasn't really part of that whole.
And I don't even think I was on Facebook till like 2008.
Yeah, I think
so.
it was like 2009 for me, something like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was like, so I found a couple of clients through Craigslist, and then like word of mouth, they would make referrals. And it was, so I had actually taken a year leave from teaching.
Yep.
And so around probably like February, one of my teaching friends was like, hey, like the principal is like, they kind of need to know, like, are you coming back at the end of your leave? And I was in no way, like, was it a viable business? Like, I was working another job, like 30 hours a week. I was doing this, but I was like, nope, I'm not coming back. Like, there was something about it. It was just, I was like, this is a path I have to go down, and, and I kept that part-time job, for another probably like 2 years. Or I guess I was full-time. I was like working 2 full-time jobs for a while. It was just to, like there were like days where like I would do like hikes in the morning, and then like I worked at J. Crew, and I would like arrive at J. Crew and change into
J. Crew
and then like get on the floor and like start folding clothes and stuff. And it was nuts. But yeah, it was great. And like the day that I gave my notice at J. Crew was like, it was so crazy and like overwhelming. Like, oh my God, like I did this. And then I want to say it was probably like a year or 2 later, I hired my first employee. And like, it's just, yeah. So I don't know, but the off-leash thing is cool. Like, I love it. I love being outdoors. So that part I knew I was going to love, like, from the get-go.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was like trial by fire. Like I look back on it and like, like some of my clients, it was great. My friend who's a trainer would refer like a lot of his clients to me. It was like super helpful. Like he really got me like going, which is I think part of why I feel so fine with like helping other people, because it's like no one's gonna walk all the dogs. Like there's plenty of dogs to go around. And like so far they haven't started talking back to me when I'm like in the woods, so it is like on occasion nice to have a conversation with a human being. But I had to learn a lot. Like when we first got Lola, we would take her hiking and like she like would start to follow someone else, and I was so nervous. Like I was like, oh my God, our little French bulldog is gonna go off into the wild and never come back. And Alex was actually like, no, I think this will work. Like it'll be fine. And then after 2 years of hiking with her, I was like, oh, I could totally take other people's dogs hiking off leash. I'm so confident in that, and it was easy because I started with so few clients. It was literally like taking like my dog and one other dog, and now when my employees start, I have to like remind myself of that they're starting with like 4 or 5 dogs that they don't know. And it's a little bit like getting thrown into the frying pan. But
yeah, I mean, that's something that I think we can both, hearing your story is super similar to how I started getting going. And I feel like I avoided a lot of mistakes because I didn't have that volume in the beginning. And it just gave me the chance to like get to know what I was doing, because I didn't know what I was doing. Right. And then I met people along the way, and, they helped me out. And I think that's something that I found really valuable, and that's something that I'm trying to do for other people. And a big part of this project even is just creating a resource where people can be like, what the hell are these people doing all day? Right. You know what I mean? Or how'd they get what? And not even necessarily to encourage somebody to get into the business, but to be educated that, a lot of people that do this job they took their time because, I mean, I went into the woods with you in the wintertime with, I mean, I don't remember how many, 8 or 10,
something
like that. And then
reasonable.
my dog. And you can't teach somebody to have confident vibes when they have 8 to 10 dogs.
Right.
You can't teach somebody, okay, you know, this is, because dogs can feel it if you're not comfortable. Or, I mean, I'm not comfortable with more than 4 dogs off leash myself.
Right.
And that's if I have my own dog with me, because he's the one that keeps everybody around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's something that I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to, as far as, you know, not giving away secrets, but what's your state of mind when you have the dogs in the woods, knowing that they're just kind of out having a good time and they're not just going to take off on you?
Sure. Well, I don't know. I have a few different like thoughts about it. So, I mean, one is like, I've seen people like comment on like dog things or whatever, and they're like, nobody can control 8 dogs off leash. And they're like, I can barely control my 2. And it's like, well, but like, this isn't your job. It's not what you've spent years like getting good at. It's not what you've read up on and practiced. Like, I wouldn't, I don't know, walk into Alex's building and pretend I knew anything about how to build a robot, you know,
Right.
but I don't think that means nobody else can do it. Like, you know, so I think like that there's that, like people are like, oh God, how do you do, you know, and it's like, well, we've spent so much time, and I did build up to this, but I mean, part of it too is like, we really evaluate all the dogs.
Yep.
You know, I've had to like fire a couple clients because like their dog just wasn't coming when called, was, you know, a hound or a hound mix. And like, that's a rough one when you're off leash.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit why that's a rough one?
Sure. So, you know, like a lot of hounds, they're scent dogs. So you're off leash in the woods and you're not alone. There's deer, there's coyotes, there's raccoons and squirrels and everything. And there's, you know, decomposing whatever. And there's deer poop, and they're going to follow their nose. And especially if they are a hunting dog,
Right.
you know, but we have hunting dogs that come with us that are trained, and they will come back, you know, and I don't worry about them at all. You know, I know even if they go out of my sight, like they're there, but they're, you know, they're just not, I can't see them. They're just doing like a big loop
Right.
in the woods, and then they're back on the trail. And if I call them, they're back. But we've had a few dogs over the years, you know, that just, and, you know, I mean, I had one dog, she was an awesome dog, and her owners worked so hard with her and training, and it was just, it was like we'd be fine, and then it would be pouring rain and she would catch something and she would bolt. And that dog was the fastest dog I have ever seen. And I was finally like, this is going to end really badly. And I don't think that it's the right fit for us anymore.
Right.
And, you know, they were super bummed and I was super bummed. But, you know, if it's not safe, you know, we're not going to do it.
Right.
And for the most part, you have labs and Goldens and Doodles and everything. And they want to
hang out with you.
They want to be with you. You know, they want to be with the other dogs. They're food motivated. So, you know, it's like that, you know, that really works in our favor. And the pack mentality really works in our favor.
Yep.
You know, they want to be with their buddies. I mean, half the time, some of them are too busy wrestling to even be aware that there's anything else going on in the woods. You know, they're like running and wrestling and tripping over each other and having a blast. And it's just like a moving play group.
Yep. Now,
So-
how, if you start off a hike, how long do you usually spend out there? Is it just kind of like you go out there and you have a loop that you stick to, or do you, I'm just wondering in terms of how the workflow goes in your day, like how many do you just kind of go on one hike per day?
We we each do, so I have 3 employees now, and we each take groups out twice a day. Sometimes I only go once a day, just depending on the how many dogs we have on the schedule. But we do 2 hikes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and we're moving for about an hour and a half each hike. And we have our loops that we do, but like when it's really hot, like earlier in the summer, it's like more of that time will be spent at the water than moving. And when it's like freezing, we have like those negative 15 degree whatever days. I mean, we cancel when it's like dangerous to be outside, but like when it's real cold, I just go by the dogs. Unless it's like a bunch of labs, and then I'm like, you're never gonna care what time, like how long you've been out here, how cold or hot you are. It's fine.
Your brain dead.
Yeah, like I'm like, all right, like fun's over, we gotta go. But yeah, I mean, we have like a few different loops. We don't all walk together because that would be, our groups are usually around 6 dogs, so like 4 of us together, 24 dogs.
That's intimidating.
Yeah, like that's not, and I mean, and like it is, the groups we know all of our dogs, we know them really well, know who gets along with who doesn't. But also the more dogs you put together, the higher likelihood of like shenanigans.
Right.
So, that's why we like kind of try to keep them moving, and playing and active, and we keep it to like 2 of us will walk together, and then we run into each other on the trails and other people and other dog walkers. And
I would love to talk about that. That was kind of a topic I thought would be a good one for you specifically, because I have my own way of dealing with people that are terrible when their dogs run up on my dogs. It's probably not as nice as what you do.
Oh.
I've been getting really frosty in my old age. But leash etiquette is a huge problem. And I think it's also, especially where I live, more and more people are getting dogs just generally, like instead of having children, case in point, you and I.
Sure.
And I feel as though there's a cultural difference between people back in the day that, like when I was growing up, only the dog people got dogs. Mm-hmm. The families that always got the German Shepherd got that, or the family that, adopted the Greyhounds always did.
Right.
We knew like, oh, those are dog people.
Yeah.
And now like everybody has a dog.
Right.
And it's becoming difficult, I think, to be able to advocate for your own dog if everybody else is doing something different, and there's not this like these rules that I think back in the day were just like, don't let your dog come near my dog,
Right.
So I was wondering if you could kind of talk to that, because I mean, I can attest, I was in the woods with you. We came about a few dogs, and you had all of your dogs on leash within a matter of a minute.
Yeah.
And dealt with it very professionally. But I have never met a dog walker in the fells that has done that for me. And it's been really challenging, because I don't want to like teach somebody in that moment, especially when I'm ready to like, lose my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's so challenging. And, and it was a learning curve for me too. When I first started, I'd go to the Weston Reservoir, and
that's Cat Rock. Is that Cat Rock?
No, well, there's the reservoir and then there's Cat Rock. Okay. So Weston has 2 really nice places. And probably within like 2 years of me starting, they like cracked down on the dog walkers because the residents of Weston were complaining. And a little bit of like NIMBYism, like not my backyard. But also, I mean, there were dog walkers coming from everywhere, like,
right.
And not always having control. And so basically I don't even know what it is now, but you had to get a permit, and then you were only allowed to have a certain number of dogs. And at the time it was whatever the permit was. I was like, that's like way out of my pay, like ability, financial, because it was Weston.
Right. Yeah. Like, that'd be $3,000.
Yeah. And I just was like, Callahan's still free. Like I'll head over there.
Over there, yeah.
And I mean, Callahan's also like 800 acres and tons of trails.
It's huge.
It puts Weston to shame.
I mean,
you know,
but the thing about it is it's intimidating for people that aren't nature people. Right. Like my wife has this term, it's the city girls get lost, die in the woods. City girls die in the woods. And we live on the back of Horn Pond in Woburn, and it's literally, you cannot get lost in the trails. Like there's a golf course on one side, traffic on the other side, and a lake. Like, so you always kind of have your bearings.
So when I taught high school math, I taught at Woburn High.
Okay. So you're probably, well, it's on the other side of town, but it's been a challenge even to, for somebody that, for her, she's awesome now, like in our backyard. But, for somebody that is a dog person, but might not have the confidence to like go into the woods and get lost and be like, yeah, screw it, I'll find my way.
Right.
I can see how it would be a deterrent to go to Callahan, because it's crazy. Nothing's marked. It's like, you gotta use your spidey senses.
Yeah. And it's not well marked, which is a little bit of a uphill battle we're having, trying to get it more well marked. But I mean, and some would say it's also overrun by dogs at this point because it is such a popular destination for dog owners. But basically, I came out to Callahan and I met some other new dog walkers that actually became like really good friends of mine, and kind of learning like from them a little bit. Like, and also I think like life's just easier if you avoid like the combative interactions on the trails. So like I will often just run into the woods. Like I just run away from people sometimes because and the dogs, once you start running and being like, hey,
they all follow you.
They all will follow.
So you'll actually be on the trail, see another group coming towards you, and you take all of your dogs into the woods.
If I don't know who it is.
Right.
Yeah. If I don't know them, that's like one way I'll do it. Also, I mean, a lot of people don't want to walk their dog past a group of 6 dogs, and so it's also a courtesy. But ultimately, yeah, I started to see the same thing happening at Callahan, where it was like dog walkers are going to need to be permitted, like the dog walkers are. And so I just decided that the best way to combat it was to have my groups be the best example of like what we could do. And it makes my life easier if I can call them all over to me and they'll sit and we can calmly wait till somebody walks past. I consider it a huge success if I pull into the woods and the people walking by have no idea I'm there.
Right. Yeah. You're quiet. And
it's like me and my 6 dogs or 8 dogs or whatever, and we're quiet and they're, but yeah, I mean, it's, when I started, I would walk with another dog walker and we'd see someone and he'd be like, oh, they're friendly, don't worry. And at the time I didn't really think anything of it. And I was like, oh, that's nice. You're letting them know, don't worry, and then it was like over time, and also like owning a reactive dog myself, it's like, that's great that your dog is friendly. It doesn't mean I want to meet them. It doesn't mean my dog wants to meet your friendly dog. I go and run at Callahan, sometimes with a dog, sometimes just by myself. And I'm like, your lab could be the friendliest dog in the world. He knocks me down and breaks my ankle. Like, we're going to have a problem.
Right.
And a lot of people just don't get that. And I feel like at this point, my goal when I'm in the woods, because also like it's nature and we should all be, everyone's out there for their own reason, for, peace of mind or just to get outside and fresh air or enjoy something. My goal is to have the least amount of impact on someone else's experience.
Right.
And so I work really hard and I make all my employees work really hard on like the dogs need to know to sit. They need to come to us, and we know which dogs are gonna chase a bike, like gonna bark at a horse, like gonna just run up to whoever. Like they're just like, we want to meet whoever. and they get leashed like immediately. And then that we just try to avoid the conflict as much as possible because I mean, yeah, I've also like gotten into like screaming matches on the trail with someone.
Hard.
It's really hard.
And I just think because there's not rules, so I think it's really helpful for you to kind of lay that out, and hopefully somebody that's listening that, you know, if you've ever screamed ahead of your dog, he's friendly. It's great that your dog's friendly. I think that that's important. I think that there are fewer and fewer friendly dogs these days, so I think that that's a good thing. But there are also dogs in the woods that aren't friendly. And I mean, especially like where we are, there's so much, there's so many people walking their dogs like around the pond, and the trails are kind of away from the pond. And so crossing over between off-leash dogs and on-leash dogs, it happens all the time. And your dog just, if you have a dog off the leash, they're absolutely 100% cannot run up on another dog on a leash. Like that is going to be a disaster.
Right.
It doesn't matter how friendly the dogs are. And I think that that's I think it's an important etiquette thing for people to realize that there has to be like a little bit of control.
I think it's also the thing of like you were saying, how it's like everybody's getting dogs now and some people are getting them instead of kids, and like 100% like we have dogs and we don't have children, but like, and I've over the years sort of, you know, it's that whole like, oh, they're my fur babies. Like they're not actually babies. Like they're not actually my children.
It's like I say that so that all my clients think that I'm not a cold-hearted person.
Right. But like,
I'll throw it out there every once in a while just to be like part of the, not too far out of the fray because I'm getting older and soon I'm going to be the old crazy dog lady.
Right.
But you're right. They're not actually
but they're
babies.
not, you know, and so like I will have clients who are like, why does she do that? And I'm like, because
she's a dog.
She's a dog. Like they're not humans. They're not small humans covered in fur. They're animals. And so like, it's, you know, it's just like, so yeah, I mean, yes, I can walk 8 dogs off leash in the woods and like have the confidence that it's under control. Does that mean that like it doesn't go sideways like every once in a while? Like, no, of course not. Like it's an imperfect world. Like it happens. But I also know I don't want to say not trust my dogs 100% because like I trust them, but also to know that like there's still like a base animal in there that's like, oh, I know what you want me to do, but like that deer looks real cool. Like I'll be back in like 30 minutes. Like it's cool. You know, like and I think that that's really hard for people sometimes. And so they think like, oh, my dog is like this perfect, great, like baby angel. And like, oh, you're out here walking and like our dogs want to be best friends. And it's like, we have no idea what like, I mean, we do, but like you don't always know like what signal another dog's going to give off to your dog. Yeah.
And I think that it's important for us to recognize that we don't actually. I think that that's been like a really liberating thing for me with trying to figure out dog behavior. Cause I know I read a lot about it and I listen to a lot of people try to analyze dog behavior. And well, first of all, so much of it is scent oriented, which we have no idea. But the second part is like any visual cues that we can see, our reaction time is so slow. By the time we realize what's going on in a really uncontrolled environment, like it's way too late. You know what I mean? So, I mean, we're dealing with animals that we trust, like you said, because we train them and work with them. But at the same time, we have to respect the fact that their way of communicating and their way of interacting with one another, like, yeah, we know a little bit about it, but the way that, like, the control that we have over it is, like, very little. We, in our dog in isolation, yeah, sure, you know, but once, you know, other things happen, I mean, I've seen, like, play sessions between my dog and other dogs without any aggression just confuse the hell out of me within, like, 5 minutes because so many things have happened within that amount of time. Like, okay, there's play bowing, there's lick licking, there's this, that. And I'm trying to like figure it all out in my mind. Like, what are they trying to say to each other? And then at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, they're just being dogs and it's okay if I don't know.
Right.
You know, but
Yeah.
But at the same time, having the respect to be like, because I don't know, I'm going to keep my dog over here and you keep your dog over there. And that's where I think that we're kind of falling apart as a society.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's also just like, you know, I think it was Alex who said this to me a while ago. But it's like people always want to like walk with you. Like when you're working or, with their dog, like, oh, they see us like, oh, free play group, like whatever. But it's like, you wouldn't I mean, maybe other people would. I would not do this. You wouldn't walk up to like another person walking by themselves in the woods and be like, hey, like, what are you up to? Can I walk with you and like chat? And there's something about everyone having dogs that like removes these sort of base, like, courtesies that we have in life as humans that are like, is it okay if I come into your space
uninvited?
Yeah, and a lot of people who are at the park are there because they want their dog to socialize. And so I just think as long as there's that like, I'd like my dog to socialize, would you? And the answer is yes, I would. Let's see how our dogs socialize. Like, great. But if any party, including the dogs, demonstrates like a disinterest in the socialization, like that should be the end of it.
Right. And I think instead what happens is people kind of get embarrassed. Mm-hmm. I think that's the first instinct is people get embarrassed. And so then they try to push it even more in some cases because now it's like an awkward situation. And I guess the key is just to say if you could say to yourself, it's totally cool not to interact and to just be. You know what I mean? Like you said, if, you pass by somebody else that doesn't have a dog in the woods, it's okay to just say hi and then move along. I think that's a really great message for people that don't know. And I think that you have to advocate for your dog too. Mm-hmm. And that's the part
Absolutely.
that I'm stuck in is like, I'm practically out there with machetes, like, like a crazy lady.
No, I mean, like that's the thing that's really hard too is again, with you saying people feel embarrassed or people take offense. Like you're saying there's something wrong with them and their dog. And
that's where the kid thing comes in because I do feel like some people, because they're almost treating the dog like their child, if somebody says something derogatory or upsetting to them, it can immediately turn into like, it's not your fault. It's not their fault. Like I understand that your dog's not perfect. Like, why don't you get it? You know, it's okay. Like, it's totally cool.
Well, we've had, so Gus is our now oldest and he has been fairly reactive for most of his life and there's no real rhyme or reason to it. We had like 6 perfect months where he was like a great like young pup. And then something flipped a switch and, he's selective about dogs he wants to hang out with. He's selective about the humans he wants to hang out with. And my life got a lot easier when I stopped trying to force him into situations that made him uncomfortable.
Wow, that's awesome.
And just recognizing like, okay, we don't necessarily have the life that I envisioned us having together. Like you're not running with me everywhere. You're not on all of my play groups, but you're pretty happy, like hanging out at the homestead, doing individual hikes with me, like, just having mom time. And like once that shifted, like I feel like we've had like way fewer problems because I don't force him to do something that makes him anxious.
Right.
But at the same time, like we'll have him somewhere with us because like we have our dog with us because we're going somewhere and someone else will have a dog and they're like, oh, let him play. I'm like, sorry, like he is not good with other dogs. Oh, well, my Susie is just as sweet as can be.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that is super for you, but my dog is kind of an asshole. So like, I'm like still going to have to go with let's not, and it's people getting like, oh no, but my dog's great. And like, great. Like, that's awesome for you. But like, listen to what other people are saying to you. And if you, and like, if you see someone, your dog is off leash, you see someone with a dog on a leash, like, absolutely not. Like, that dog could be on a leash for any number of reasons that would indicate that your dog running up to it is going to be a disaster.
Yes.
And, and a lot of people just get like really bent out of shape about it. And I mean, I just yell at people sometimes. Like, I've had people, oh, your dog's friendly. Nope.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah. Well, I find that's the only chance I have.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard because I think at the core, like, I'm actually a really nice person. But in that instance, it's like that's my only shot of like making sure that my dog is safe. And when I say my dog, I mean my client's dog or my dog, like, doesn't make a difference to me. One of the most irritating things to me. So I hike in the fells only on 2 days a week. I usually go on Mondays and Fridays with a small group. And I found the entrances are the most difficult because, you enter, then you can go one of like 5 different ways. And, the chances of me meeting somebody, not at the entrance, but close to the entrance is high. And there'll be these people that come into the woods with like, 6 or 7 dogs, and 2 of them will be on a leash and the rest of them will be off leash. And the dogs that are on leash will be like losing their minds because they see my dog or dogs. And sometimes I just have to say, all right, this is going to be what it is. Let's just walk through. And 9 times out of 10, it's fine. But if I see a walker that has their one or 2 dogs on a leash, it's like I'm bushwhacking it because I don't want to have anything to do with that, because the only bad experience I've ever had in the woods was trying to pass by a dog walker that had 3 or 4 dogs off leash and 2 dogs on leash, and the dogs actually bit one another because they redirected towards each other.
Yeah.
And man, that was like so rough. Like, and immediately you're stressed. I don't know what your anxiety is like, but mine goes from being like, like mopey reggaeton to like, all of a sudden like through the freaking roof. Like, I go from being like Bob Marley chill to like crazy in 2 seconds because I have because I have dogs off leash. I'm worried about somebody else's dogs. I'm trying to keep track of what the hell's going on with mine. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, there's 2 dogs that are biting one another. Right. So like you were talking about how, being in nature and enjoying your time can very quickly turn into like, and I know that that's me personally. No, I know not everybody has that reaction, but. Well,
like when I'm in nature and I'm enjoying it, like with a group of dogs, I'm also like
paying attention the whole time.
Constantly scanning, like looking. And I do feel like I like slack a little now that I have employees because like they're really on top of it. And I'm like, oh, you guys got this. Like, I'll just zone out.
It's okay to, divvy out the responsibilities.
I'll zone out a little bit and you guys just give me the heads up when there's like someone coming around the corner. But no, I mean, it is like, and I think, for me, a lot of like, how I act now has come from working with and walking reactive dogs and walking them where other dogs are off leash, where they are off leash, like working with muzzles and like everything. And I had this German Shepherd that I walked from when he was 4 months old. And that dog took like a piece of my heart. Like he was, and it was when I was just starting out. I could never take a client like him now because I don't have the time and the bandwidth. He taught me so much about behavior, about human and dog interaction, about like how to control a situation. And we made huge strides. And like it got to the point where he would see someone coming on the trail and he would return and come back and sit next to me.
It's awesome.
Which was like the first time that happened, I was like, that's it. I've hit my peak. Like, it'll never get better than this. Like, we're done. But it was so hard and it was so stressful all the time. And so now my groups, I don't have any, we don't have anybody that's like super reactive like that we walk. Their dogs, like, they'll like snap at each other and like whatever every once in a while, like, that's my stick, like,
yep, or overtiredness, or
like there aren't 1,000 sticks in the woods. Like, but so I feel like at that point, like, I was constantly on edge, like when I was walking, because I was like, you never know, like, who's gonna come around the corner, like, what's gonna, and now it's like I've got more dogs, but like they're mostly relaxed. So now I'm just scanning for like who's coming, and it's like I recognize a lot more people at the park. So like Callahan has a lot of regulars, so like that works out well, and we can actually walk like sometimes with other people if I'm like really not a huge extrovert. So walking dogs in the woods works out well for me in that regard. And I think that's part of why one of my solutions when I see people coming is to run into the woods and hide, is that it eliminates a lot of interaction for me. And I also sort of like assume someone's going to yell at me if like anything goes wrong, and I had an interaction one time where a woman was coming down one trail. We hit at kind of like a 90-degree angle, and her dog and my dogs just sort of like came upon each other at this like interaction. And it was like, no one was fighting, but everybody was very worked up about it. And there was a lot of teeth and barking. And I was like calling my dogs back, and she was like yelling at me and was like, well, can we go on our walk? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm really sorry. And it was like louder and worse than this, but like, it was just like, and then finally I was like, look, like, I'm sorry, but you don't need to scream at me in the woods about it. And then she had this moment of like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then it was actually really nice because we ended in like a good place. But I was like, yeah, it's so easy when things start to go awry to just like, to like hit the roof and to like blame the other person. And then when I just was like, you're yelling at me in the middle of the woods, she was like, oh, like snapped back to reality. Like, right. Like, you're another human being. I'm a human being. Like, let's try to like interact that way and not like we're like mortal enemies who are dueling to the death or something. Although I've had those interactions too.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a fight or flight thing that happens. Like I was listening to a podcast, and the interviewer was interviewing somebody that trains like women's self-defense, and he was talking about how, you can be like a trained mixed martial artist, but then if somebody just in a street fight, like you could be terrible because there's all that anxiety and emotion and adrenaline and what your natural tendencies are that you might not even know. And I feel like sometimes when I'm in the woods and things like that happen, or even if I'm not, like I had an instance the other day where I was walking a dog that I've trained, and he's awesome. And we passed by two women walking smaller dogs, and they had them off leash, and they didn't have any control. They were like screaming their heads off. My dog just walked by, didn't have a problem. Then on the way back, the same thing happened, and I just lost it on her. And I just said, this is completely unfair to my dog. Like I don't know why you would even have these dogs off leash. They're totally aggressive dogs. Yeah. And the woman, like, you could see her like breaking down, like she was going to cry. And then I felt terrible. Right. So I'm like, should I have worded it different? I'm like, but in the moment, it's like you get so kind of caught up. And, I figured since we had one really negative interaction that she would wise up, or both of them would wise up and just put leashes on the dogs. Like, they're not coming when they're being called. This is crazy. So I do think that there's just that, like, raw element of it that you act or do things in a certain way and you're just like, oh, I would never do that in any other type of situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the other thing too is, and I think that like this is where, like you said this earlier, but like also like where people do get defensive is because like you're advocating for your dog and you have to, like, whether you're a dog owner or a dog walker, like you have to be their voice because they don't have a voice. They have teeth and snarls and like that's how they can, you know, like, so by the time it's getting to them being like, I've had it, you're looking at a way worse situation.
Yeah, than if you just said something.
If you just say something. And so it's super uncomfortable and it does sometimes result in like crappy interactions and one or both parties feeling like jerks or, you know, whatever. But yeah. But like if you walk away with all dogs like uninjured and safe, like then it's
a good day.
Then it's, yeah.
And I think that it's really helpful. I think that you're laying this all out because I do think that there's such a divide between dog walkers and dog trainers. And we had this conversation last time we met, but like, you're a dog trainer. Like, there's no two ways about it. You might not advertise your services or teach classes or do group classes or title your dogs or anything like that. But at the core, like, you know, you're building that bridge. And I think that that's something that as a dog walker, I quickly learned that I was going to have to figure stuff out on the dog training side because I was dealing with dogs. Like you said, you learn the most from your worst dogs.
Right.
And the same is true for me. I learn the most from the dog that's like ready to eat me. You know what I mean? Because I have to. So I think that that's an important message for anybody that's working with dogs is like, don't just let things slide. If something's happening and you don't like it or you don't have control or you don't understand what happened or why it happened. I mean, it happens to me all the time, like probably more than it should at this point, but, you know, constantly learning. But we need to be better, I think, about building that bridge between, oh, that person's just a crazy dog trainer.
Right.
And this person is quote unquote, just a dog walker.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like for me, part of it came from like, just being like a super huge nerd. And like, so I started the business and I was like, oh, better read like every
Everything
book I can, you know, like, you know, and then like having your own dogs, you're like, oh, like, you know, Lola, our first dog had like, you know, these like health issues. And so I was like, oh, I better learn everything I can about like different types of dog food that like could possibly like be, you know, like raw or whatever.
She was a Frenchie, right?
Yeah.
So she had a little bit of health issues.
Yeah. I mean, she was actually really healthy for a Frenchie. She just, she would like break out in hives all the time. And we finally just figured out that grain-free was the way
best.
to go. And we're still feeding everyone grain-free, even though we're not bucking the trend right now.
They did that test on 700 dogs.
Yeah.
So everybody's freaking out.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, so there's that. And then like Gus being reactive was like, okay, I got to learn all this, you know? And it's like, and then, you know, we started fostering dogs like 4 or 5 years ago for rescue. And that opens up like a whole other, like, you have to, you know, it's like the more time you spend with dogs, the more you like, I mean, you'd be, well, I was going to say you'd be dumb not to, but that's kind of rude. Like, like it's in your best interest to learn more about these animals and their behavior and like, even like breed to breed, like what, I mean, with Lola, like the very first obedience class we did was at like the MSPCA and like literally they were like going around of like, you know, like what was your dog bred to do? You know, like if they're a purebred, you know, and they're like, there was like a Bernese, you know, they're like working in the mountains and this and that. And then they get to French Bulldog and they're like,
lie on the couch,
look weird and sit in people's laps. But like, it's really important, you know, to learn more about like, I don't know. It just like what your dog's like purpose is.
Right.
You know, and like what they're telling you, you know, like when they're chewing up your coffee table, like it's not because they like the taste. Like
Right.
it's like there's something, you know, and like so that just having had, you know, we're on our 4th personal dog now, Alex and I, and like we've had like almost 40 foster dogs. So
Wow.
like just like all
Can I
of
interrupt you? Which rescue do you work for?
that. Great Dog
Great
Rescue.
Dog. And can you just talk a little bit about that organization, just
yeah.
for anybody that's listening that
Sure.
doesn't know about it?
So it's a shelterless rescue. So it's all foster homes. And we have a south to north partnership. So all the dogs come up from the south, like Georgia and Tennessee. And they get pulled by Southern Partners rescues down there. And they have a quarantine kennel in Woburn. But all of the dogs, after Massachusetts requires a 48-hour quarantine when dogs come in from out of state. But then they all go into foster homes. And we got Gus from them 12 years ago. And that was sort of like how we found them. And then I started doing home visits, like so, you know, lots of people know now when you adopt a dog, it's not just like go to the pound and like point at one in a cage and take it home. Like,
yeah, I know firsthand. Had two dog trainers with a 6-foot fence all around their yard, and we really struggled.
Yeah,
so I don't know
hard.
how some people even adopt dogs. We were just at our wits' end, and then we got Rubens, thank God, because he's the best. But it was like, I'm like, are you people serious? A 3rd home visit?
Yeah, we only do the 1 home visit, but you do an interview and they check references. But it's also like at the same time, I would say like half of the dogs that we've fostered we've fostered them because they were returned.
Yeah, it's hard.
You know, and it's just, it's really hard. And, you know, so that's our goal, is to match the right dog with the right family, you know? And so like our last foster was like a little healer, like maybe min pin mix. And this like
It was cute.
80-year-old woman who lived in an apartment by herself, like wanted to adopt her. And not to be ageist, but it was like, this is a dog that's going on like 4-mile hikes every day. Like, is this? And she was like, oh, I bring her to my quilting circle.
Oh,
and
geez.
it's like, oh, or like, we have a dog for you. It's just not this one, you know? Like, so, I mean, it's really, you know, it's really interesting. And I mean, that's when we really discovered that like working breeds are like our best match for me and Alex.
I mean, you literally, like the dogs that you have from here, I'm just like, oh no, I'd never take that dog. I'm like, that dog is gonna eat its way out of the house, literally probably bore a hole in the wall to run away.
I mean, we had one that could open doors. She could open I yelled, we were having some construction done, and I like yelled at the contractor because she was like out in the main part of the house and like not where I had left her. And I was like, you guys are leaving the doors open. And he was like, we haven't been over there today. And then I also have cameras so I can like see what kind of shenanigans they're getting up to. And I watched her open a door. And I was like, well, this changes a lot. And I was like, and this is terrifying. But yeah, I mean, so that's like, you know, Addie, our youngest, is an Australian cattle dog, and she was surrendered to the rescue because I think her original owner was like a 21-year-old college kid, and she came home from college and was like, hey, Mom and Dad, I got a 3-month-old healer puppy. And they were like, no, you did not. Because they had healers before, and they were like, it's not. And we had her for like 2 days, and I was like, yeah, you're not leaving us. Like, we were just fostering her, and but it's like, yeah, this dog needs to work. And like, thank God we have like the space that we
and
do.
That you have the experience to know how to how to exercise her.
Yeah.
And train her and everything else. It's really not easy, especially the dogs that come through the shelter system or the rescue. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of them, and I'm just like, man, that's just going to be a tough one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and it's really interesting because like, people are always like, oh, but I want a puppy, or like, oh, but I want this. Like, there are so many puppies. Great Dog takes in all of these, they call them nursery fosters. So they're pregnant dogs that are in like kill shelters. Yep. And they'll pull them, and then they have the puppies. And so then it's like the mom, and they'll be like, I mean, God, they're so cute, but like just little pee and poop machines at that age. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, you can get like, not necessarily purebred, but like they're puppies. And then, I mean, every breed has a rescue at this point. Yep. Like even, and like Ruby is a rescue. She's a Frenchie. And they end up in rescue all the time because they're stubborn, stinky.
They're tough.
Health
problems. Sometimes they don't love other dogs.
No, yeah.
So that's another, I know the Rottweiler fancier because we're Rottweiler people, but they often, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, beautiful dogs. I mean, I don't know what they're like because I've never interacted with them, but just seeing the number of rots that go through that rescue, I mean, some of them don't look like they would, I hate to say it, but like they look like bad breedings, like for the looks.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they're not cool dogs. You know what I mean? So, and it's just surprising because, a Rottweiler puppy is like the same price as a doodle.
Right.
So it's really interesting to see, how just how many dogs there are out there that need homes. It's awesome that you do that work. We'd love to get into it too. I think now that we're down to 2 dogs, it's more possible, but we just came off of 2 puppies that have now just been able to be in the same room and lie on their beds, and we can watch television. So we're kind of enjoying that.
Right. Yeah. It
right
does.
Now.
I mean, it's a lot. But it's also, I mean, yeah, like it feels great. Like I love doing it. Like I'll do it for as long as I can, but like we also take breaks from, foster because like we also have like client dogs stay here. We have busy times when we have clients' dogs here. We have 3 of our own dogs, was 4, up until about a year ago. It's a lot of dog in like one household. Yep. And, and the thing about like fostering is you like with my clients, the reason we don't take dogs we don't know overnight. Yep. Like,
I know that rule.
Yeah. You guys are familiar. But it's because, the dogs, their personality. Fostering like throws that completely out the window. You're taking in this like unknown beast of like, whatever. And the rescue, Great Dog does an awesome job evaluating them. They have a pretty good idea of like whether they can be with other dogs or not, like, because they've already kind of been in Southern foster before they come up. So they do a pretty good job of like letting us know that. But,
their temperament more or less.
So we basically get the like high energy, needs to run, not always great with kids dogs. That's our brand.
Figures. Yeah. All right. Well, we've been chit-chatting for quite some time now. Can you just let everybody know where they can learn more about your business?
Sure. It's Beantown Hounds. We have a website, beantownhounds.com.
And follow them on Instagram because you put out the cutest pictures. So.
Oh, thanks. I feel like we don't put them out often enough. I need like a social media manager.
No, you're doing a great job.
It's that whole Gen X thing. I haven't quite latched on to the social media.
Well, thanks again for making time to sit down with me, Megan.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. This is
problem.
Awesome. My name is Leah Lodato, and I'm a professional dog walker and dog trainer. I operate FitPet Boston and work in Medford and Winchester, Mass. You can contact me at leah@fitpetboston.com, or you can visit my website and social media pages, all searchable by using the handle FitPet Boston.